Imagine a peaceful Nebraska sunrise disrupted by roaring motorcycle engines and a grizzled ex-Navy SEAL quietly gripping the wheel of his old farm truck. In that electric moment, our unassuming hero stands face to face with a ruthless biker gang, their leader's scarred grin daring him to stand down or risk devastating consequences for his family. It's a clash that shakes the very soul of rural life, igniting a battle for farmland, freedom, and a community's future. Will cunning tactics and close-knit friendships be enough to triumph over a well-funded criminal network? Welcome to this gripping tale of courage and loyalty in the heartland. Before diving into the full story, do me a favor. Subscribe to my channel, Farmer Story. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the best action-packed narratives, uplifting rural adventures, and real-life accounts of farming folk facing incredible odds. Stick with this story until the very end. You won't believe how it all comes together when a small town community rises to defend their own. A crisp Nebraska morning stretched across the horizon as Liam Hayes maneuvered his pickup down a dusty, unpaved road toward Browning's general store. It was well before 7, and the only other vehicles in sight were two locals' trucks and the old, faded one belonging to Harold Browning, who owned the place. Liam needed to pick up his usual farm supplies, coffee, twine, replacement nozzles for an irrigation hose before spending the rest of the day out in the fields of Hayes family acres. The rhythmic crunch of gravel beneath his tires was comforting, a familiar reminder of the peace he'd sought upon retiring from his 18-year career as a Navy SEAL. His farm's battered, boxy work van bore a hand-painted sign reading Hayes Family Acres. The paint was chipped, but that never bothered him. Agriculture was honest work, and minor scuffs and dents on a farm vehicle meant it was doing its job. He had no idea the trouble that moniker would soon attract. Harold's daughter, Addison Browning, worked the morning shift at the counter. Liam hadn't even finished greeting her when he heard it. The roar of motorcycles, low and menacing, echoed through the thin glass windows. 6 bikers pulled into the gravel lot. They wore black leather vests emblazoned with the emblem of the Crimson Vipers MC, a coiled snake entwined around a flaming skull. Liam, a man trained to notice threat patterns, calmly clocked their positions. 2 near the road, 1 peeling off to the side exit, the rest surrounding the entryway. Stepping out onto the store's porch, coffee still in hand, Liam locked eyes with the lead biker, Ryder. A jagged scar cut down Ryder's left cheek, and from the posture of his shoulders to the quick glances he exchanged with his men, he radiated a certain tension Liam recognized from paramilitary operatives he'd faced overseas. "That's a nice van you got there, old-timer," Ryder remarked, nodding toward the scuffed cargo vehicle. "Ever think about better security? Hate for it to get ruined." Liam took a slow sip, forcing his voice to remain neutral. He understood the subtext, either pay or suffer. "I pay my share of taxes. Don't need extra security," he replied. Ryder tapped a gloved finger on the van's side panel. "Sure about that? County's strapped. Accidents happen." A flicker of tension coursed through Liam's nerves. He'd witnessed enough intimidation in his past life to know when a line was being drawn. Even Addison inside the store sensed the threat, her face whitening as she carefully picked up her phone to dial her father. Staying outwardly calm, Liam responded in the same level tone he might use on a stubborn landowner overseas. "No need, we're fine at Hayes Family Acres." A brief hush weighed upon the lot. Then Ryder smirked, patted the side of the van, and murmured, "We'll be around." The entire group revved up their bikes and peeled out, leaving a cloud of dust. Unsure of what to say, Addison stood by the door, eyes darting between Liam's stoic expression and the retreating motorcycles. Liam merely nodded once, sipped his coffee, and said, "I'll keep an eye out." But he already felt the itch of old instincts stirring, a warning signal that something far worse than petty vandalism might be afoot. By noon, the sun's heat bore down across Hayes Family Acres, which spanned 800 acres of rolling farmland. 4 generations of the Hayes family had managed these fields, but Liam had taken the farm to new heights by integrating modern irrigation systems and advanced livestock care learned from his wife, Emily Hayes, a dedicated veterinarian. Her expertise allowed them to raise healthy animals, while Liam's background in logistics and security ensured the farm ran smoothly. Liam's teenage daughter, Jade, had inherited her father's spirited resolve. At 15, she spent her summers helping with chores and her afternoons playing soccer at the county field. Emily was busy at the local veterinary clinic that day, dealing with a spate of mysterious injuries plaguing neighboring farms' horses and cattle. Burn marks, deep cuts, and occasionally suspicious chemical rashes. Many locals, including Emily, suspected these incidents weren't accidental. Returning from Browning's store, Liam parked near the barn, a structure he had upgraded with discreet surveillance equipment. To most people, it looked like any other well-kept barn, but inside he'd installed motion sensors and cameras, lessons carried over from years of behind-the-lines operations. He believed in preparedness. Victor Ramirez, the farm's manager and a former Army Ranger, approached with an anxious expression. "Boss, you need to see something by the south fence," he said, handing Liam a small bag containing cigarette butts of an imported brand nobody around here smoked. "Found these footprints an hour ago. They stopped right at the fence like somebody was staking out the property." Alarmed but keeping calm, Liam pocketed the evidence and assured Victor they'd analyze camera footage to see if anyone had been lurking at night. He also wanted to speak to Sheriff Halford, an old-school officer who'd hinted he was investigating a surge of suspicious activity in the county, from stolen fuel to farmland sabotage. Before Liam could head out to see Halford, a text popped up on his phone from an unknown number. "Smart farmers learn when to keep their heads down." He frowned. That hammered home the idea that the bikers might already be trailing him. A call then came in from Emily. "There's more trouble at the Driscoll place. Another barn fire. The owners say they saw motorcycle headlights leaving the property just before the blaze." Liam ground his teeth, a flash of anger sparking in his chest. "I'll check on them soon. Just stay safe," he told Emily, thinking of Jade too. These disturbances were no coincidence. Tension was brewing, and if the Crimson Vipers had a plan, it was unfolding rapidly. After scribbling down details in a small notebook, an old habit from his Navy SEAL days, he set up additional perimeter alerts and cross-referenced property maps to figure out potential infiltration points. Liam recognized the signs. An organized group was testing boundaries, scoping out responses. More than just bullies, they might be part of something bigger, possibly orchestrated by criminals seeking to exploit farmland for illegal gain. He inhaled the warm Nebraska air, letting it center him. Danger had come to Riverside County, and if the Crimson Vipers wanted a fight, they had no idea the skill set he could bring to bear in his own backyard. Things deteriorated over the following days. Multiple farms reported harassment, equipment vandalized or stolen, fences mysteriously cut, so livestock escaped onto county roads, and feed shipments delayed without warning. Liam kept a low profile at first, patrolling the edges of Hayes family acres with Victor and ensuring the heightened security measures were running smoothly. Despite the growing turmoil, life had to go on. Jade still had soccer practice. Emily continued her veterinarian rounds, checking ill or injured animals and documenting cases that defied normal explanations. On top of that, rumors circulated that several local barns were quietly being leased or sold, with new owners appearing overnight, all linked to out-of-state corporations. Amid the tension, a Saturday farmers market in Riverside County became a microcosm of the mounting conflict. Liam arrived early to set up a produce stall, as he'd done for years, placing fresh vegetables on display. It was usually an event bursting with community spirit, families sampling cider, children running around with sticky hands. But that morning he felt the crowd's anxiety. He spotted a few of the Crimson Vipers weaving through the aisles, wearing their leathers and scowling at vendors. Local farmers whispered that the bikers were demanding weekly contributions to keep the marketplace safe. Those who paid had noticed the harassment abate. Those who didn't found property mysteriously damaged soon after. A thick sense of unease pervaded the normally cheerful fairgrounds. Eventually, Liam caught sight of Ryder again, this time walking with a swagger toward the entrance. A hush fell around the produce stalls. Sheriff Halford was also present, though powerless to act unless a clear crime was witnessed. Ryder strode up to Liam, running a gloved finger across tomatoes neatly stacked in crates. "Fine day for business," Ryder said in a mocking tone, looking around. "Sure would be a shame if something ruined the harvest, yeah?" Liam mentally counted the onlookers. Many averted their eyes, not wanting trouble. "Yep, shame indeed," Liam replied calmly, forcing a neutral facade. Ryder's lips twisted into a half-smile. Look, buddy, we're just offering security. 500 a month, you're all set. No fires, no stolen tractors, no broken irrigation lines. He shrugged as if it were the most natural arrangement in the world. Liam leaned in slightly. Not paying, friend, he whispered, voice tight with repressed anger. Don't threaten my neighbors. Don't threaten my farm bum, and don't threaten my family. A flicker of irritation crossed Ryder's scarred face. You know, accidents happen, especially to folks who get stubborn. If it's not a broken van, it might be a spooked horse that tramples someone, maybe your daughter. That was a clear red line. Liam's expression hardened, and for the briefest moment, he let his old battlefield demeanor shine through. A few farmers watching from nearby seemed to sense the chilling shift. Ryder paused, picking up on the dangerous air around Liam. He gave a curt laugh to mask his discomfort. We'll be around, he muttered, before gesturing for his men to leave. As they roared off, Sheriff Halford sidled up. These guys aren't amateurs, he said quietly, scanning the retreating bikes. I've been trying to gather evidence, but they've got connections. People in politics who are turning a blind eye. You be careful, Liam. Clenching his fists at his sides, Liam nodded. He had to protect not only his land, but the whole community. The Crimson Vipers had escalated the fight by explicitly threatening Jade, and for Liam Hayes, that was all the motivation he needed. Later that afternoon, Liam got a panicked text from Victor. Multiple unknown vehicles had bypassed the outer fence near the irrigation control station at Hayes Family Acres. Rushing home, Liam discovered 2 pickup trucks and an SUV with tinted windows parked near the station. The drivers were out, rummaging around, snapping photos of the farm's sophisticated irrigation setup. Even from a distance, Liam recognized something off. The individuals didn't look like typical vandals. They wore casual clothes, but their body language and coordination spoke of a more disciplined background. He suspected they might be ex-military or at least well-trained security contractors, verifying schematics for the water lines. Wishing he could confront them directly, Liam instead pulled over behind a tree line, quietly activating a discreet camera system he had installed for exactly such scenarios. He recorded their activities, taking pictures of valves, reading the flow gauges, and testing the water pressure. The possibility of them attempting to sabotage or claim the infrastructure for themselves gnawed at him. He recalled how insurgent groups overseas would first map a local water supply before poisoning or controlling it. A beep from his old satellite phone broke his concentration. The screen displayed O'Connor, an old commanding officer turned private security consultant. Liam answered in hushed tones, quickly explaining the day's events. I ran those license plates, O'Connor said, referencing data Liam had sent earlier. They're tied to some corporate holdings out of state, rumored to be a front called Global Agro Solutions. The DEA's been investigating them for large-scale drug distribution hidden under agricultural investments. If these bikers are connected, you're dealing with a serious operation. That sealed Liam's suspicions. This was no random extortion scheme. He thanked O'Connor for the intel and ended the call, just as the intruders began packing up. One man paused at the edge of the field, scanning the area as if sensing they were being watched. Liam stayed perfectly still until the vehicles finally disappeared down a dirt road leading off the property. Stepping out of hiding, Liam inspected the irrigation station, verifying no major damage had been done. Yet. But small signs, like new scuff marks on the control panels, told him they might have tampered with something. He'd do a thorough diagnostic check later. Returning to the house, he found Emily home early, worried after hearing about an SUV spotted on the property. He outlined what happened, concluding, "This is bigger than just intimidation. They could be planning to repurpose farmland for drug labs or chemical disposal." Emily's face went pale. Liam, the last barn fire I examined was no accident. The horse injuries, the livestock contamination, it's all adding up. We can't handle this alone. He nodded, hugging her briefly for reassurance. I'm bringing in help, he said quietly, thinking of fellow veterans who could be trusted. If the Crimson Vipers MC was just a piece of a larger enterprise with corporate backing, Riverside County was on the brink of a crisis. On this farm, however, they'd picked the wrong man to corner. Alarm over the escalating situation reverberated throughout the county. A spontaneous meeting of local farmers convened in the Riverside Agricultural Co-op Hall, a modest wooden building where farmland owners typically met to discuss grain prices and water quotas. Now they filed in one by one, looking tense and exhausted. Harold Browning took the podium, voice shaky as he recounted new acts of vandalism. Small groups formed to compare notes. Barns set on fire soon after refusing protection, livestock mysteriously dying from chemical poisoning, crucial equipment failing at suspiciously convenient times. One battered man with a bandaged hand, Driscoll, spoke of losing an entire tractor shed to arson. Another told of her well water being contaminated, forcing her to buy bottled water for both livestock and personal use. Liam arrived late, scanning the hall for Addison, who was quietly recording testimonies on her phone. In hushed tones, Addison confided that the bikers demanded monthly safety contributions from the vendors at the last farmers market. She'd seen several vendors pay out of sheer terror. Suddenly, three men in well-tailored suits entered, representatives from Superior Agricultural Protection, the insurance firm rumored to be working alongside the Crimson Vipers. One stepped forward, addressing the crowd in a polished tone. "We understand your fears. Our company offers comprehensive coverage tailored to farming communities, protection from vandalism, quick equipment replacements, guaranteed water access. If you sign up, these recurring problems can be mitigated." The tension spiked. Everyone in the room knew the subtext: sign or suffer. The speaker breezed over the recent sabotage as unfortunate but common occurrences in rural areas, never acknowledging that many suspected direct collusion between the criminals and their so-called insurance. Detecting frustration in the crowd, Liam noted how a few farmers looked ready to cave, especially those on the brink of bankruptcy from repeated sabotage. Kevin Walters, once an Army Corps of Engineers officer, confronted the speaker. "Your coverage doesn't mention arson or vandalism caused by third parties in league with your company. You can't promise an end to the sabotage if you're not part of it, right?" A flicker of something crossed the speaker's face. Before he could respond, Ryder walked in, flanked by two Crimson Vipers. The message was loud and clear. The suits had muscle to back up their pitch. Sheriff Halford, standing at the rear of the hall, shifted uneasily, wanting to intervene but lacking direct evidence. From near the door, Addison shot Liam a meaningful glance. He signaled for her to keep filming discreetly. As the meeting went on, the suits spun polished phrases about streamlined solutions and community partnerships, but the mood turned sullen. Farm owners recognized an extortion racket wearing a corporate mask. Eventually, the suits gave out brochures and said they'd remain available for sign-ups all week, a final nudge to farmers nearing desperation. They left with the bikers, exchanging smirks that made Liam's blood boil. This was an organized machine, forging a pipeline from farmland to underworld markets, using intimidation, corporate legalities, and local corruption. The question was, how deep did it run, and who else was benefiting? That night, the gravel driveway of Hayes Family Acres crackled with new arrivals. Two vehicles parked discreetly, their headlights kept dim. Out stepped Watkins and Sullivan, old SEAL teammates of Liam's who had driven hours from neighboring states after receiving his urgent call. Both men looked hardened yet alert, scanning the quiet farmland. They joined Liam, Emily, and Victor in the barn office. Liam laid out everything: the Crimson Vipers extorting locals, mysterious corporate reps pushing agricultural insurance, sabotage of irrigation systems, and chemical traces that Emily and other veterinarians had found in livestock. Watkins, the more analytical of the two, asked detailed questions about farmland layouts and water distribution networks. Sullivan, a skilled reconnaissance operative, wanted to see thermal imaging or drone footage if possible. Victor displayed the security camera angles around the irrigation station, including the area where the bikers had tampered with valves. The group spotted at least one silhouette carrying gear typically used for testing water chemistry. Unusual for a typical gang. Liam concluded it confirmed the bigger theory: the farmland was a front for drug manufacturing or distribution. Over the next hour, they devised a rough plan. Watkins and Sullivan would help upgrade the farm's security system, installing motion sensors, concealed cameras, and some low-level deterrents like bright floodlights triggered by silent alarms. If the Vipers returned, Liam's property would become a trap. collecting evidence of criminal trespass. Meanwhile, Emily briefed them on the contamination patterns she'd observed in livestock. If they are mixing chemicals or disposing of toxic waste into irrigation lines, it explains these burn-like injuries, she said, showing photos of lesions on a horse's flank. Sullivan shook his head in disgust. Dangerous, especially if they're producing synthetic drugs. That stuff can seep into local water supplies. The conversation shifted to forging alliances. Liam explained how Addison was filming and gathering data from other farms, while Kevin Walters was analyzing the county's water infrastructure for vulnerabilities. They also had a lead in Detective Martinez, a state investigator rumored to be one of the few uncorrupted officers willing to tackle powerful offenders. "Well, we'll back you," Watkins affirmed, patting Liam's shoulder. "But this is bigger than a local gang. If it's truly a multi-state narcotics pipeline, watch out for infiltration in law enforcement or politics. They'll have eyes on everything." Undeterred, Liam checked the perimeter cameras one last time before they all turned in for the night. The fields lay dark and silent, a deceptive calm. In some ways, it reminded him of those missions overseas where quiet nights preceded an enemy assault. Only this time, the front lines were plowed fields and dusty barns, and the neighbors were families he knew by name. That night, as Jade slept unaware upstairs, Liam found himself back in a battle mindset. He recalled a motto from his SEAL unit: "The only easy day was yesterday." If the Vipers thought they were scaring a harmless farmer into submission, they had no idea they were provoking a man well-versed in the art of turning the tables. By the third night of heightened vigilance, Hayes Family Acres was more secure than ever. Watkins and Sullivan had installed additional motion-triggered cameras around the barn and irrigation lines, linking everything to portable monitors. Liam tested the system repeatedly, pleased to see no false alarms. Still, the rest of Riverside County wasn't nearly as prepared. Reports flooded in of new incidents. The Delgado brothers, known for their crop dusting business, woke to find their plane's fuel line slashed. A local feed store reported all its shipments blocked by unknown threats. Fearing retribution, many farmers stayed silent or paid the demanded fees. In an effort to centralize intel, Addison compiled a digital log of every suspicious occurrence. Using county records and farmer interviews, she unearthed a pattern. Each property's sabotage preceded a lowball purchase offer from Superior Agricultural Protection. It was blatant extortion disguised as a rescue plan. Late that night, a cluster of unknown vehicles headed toward the Morrison property, an abandoned grain silo rumored to have changed hands after a series of forced sales. The Delgado brothers, grounded but resourceful, launched a drone in hopes of capturing footage. The drone soared above the silo's crumbling roofline, recording glimpses of armed bikers unloading crates that likely contained either drug precursors or manufactured narcotics. Addison forwarded the drone feed to Watkins and Sullivan, who recognized practiced efficiency. The Vipers had posted guards at vantage points, scanned perimeters with flashlights, and coordinated movements by radio. These bikers were more than street toughs. They were operating with a level of training that pointed to ex-military members or highly disciplined security. Sheriff Halford, feeling emboldened by partial data Addison shared, attempted to organize a late-night patrol, but soon his staff reported receiving calls from up the chain telling them to stand down, focusing on traffic violations instead. Halford vented his frustrations to Liam in a hushed phone call. "They've got powerful sponsors. Each time I try to escalate, I hit a wall of red tape. I don't know who to trust." That same night, Emily identified peculiar chemical burns on several cattle at the Driscoll farm, evidence strongly suggesting water contamination. She took samples for lab tests, but the official county facility claimed a backlog and refused to prioritize them. Suspecting bribery or intimidation, Emily arranged private testing out of state. Meeting after dawn at Liam's barn office, the coalition pored over the drone footage and the Driscoll farm data. Victor pointed to new tire tracks crossing from Morrison's silo area into adjacent farmland, likely part of a covert transport route. Kevin Walters, referencing county engineering maps, guessed the Vipers were leveraging old irrigation channels to mask their shipments. The puzzle was coming together. Farmland was the perfect cover. Few neighbors, large open spaces, and easy distribution routes connecting to highways. Interfering with water or feed lines coerced farmers into compliance. Combined with bribed officials and an insurance front, the Vipers could systematically subjugate the entire region. Yet, for all their cunning, the criminals had missed one crucial detail. They were up against a community more tightly knit than they realized. Farmers cared about each other, and with a former Navy SEAL quietly orchestrating a response, cracks were forming in the Vipers' elaborate scheme. A major turning point arrived when an official from Superior Agricultural Protection attempted to strong-arm Kevin Walters directly. Kevin had a background in civil engineering and had renovated large portions of the county's water infrastructure. His expertise threatened the Vipers' plan because he knew exactly which aqueduct valves and irrigation lines were critical. One afternoon, Kevin returned to his farm to find the insurance rep waiting in a pristine sedan on his driveway. Without pleasantries, the man offered a pitifully low buyout for Kevin's land, citing upcoming disasters and insurability concerns. Kevin refused, though the threat rattled him enough that he immediately drove to Hayes Family Acres to inform Liam. In the barn office, Kevin recounted the incident in a frustrated tone. "It's blackmail, plain and simple," he said, still fuming. "And if I don't sell, they'll come after me, maybe sabotage my irrigation or start a fire." Liam nodded. "We need to document every time they approach someone with these buyout deals," he said. "Next time, record the conversation if you can." By now, Addison's compilation of testimonies included half a dozen similar incidents. Driscoll burned out of his barn, the Delgado brothers' plane disabled, even the Browning family's store threatened with a break-in if they refused to remove any anti-biker references. Each time, the criminal pattern was consistent: cause trouble, then offer a fix via insurance or a purchase. That evening, a stroke of luck. Detective Martinez from the State Bureau of Investigation arrived, introduced by Sheriff Halford. She was rumored to be one of the few officers in the region who had not been bought off. Stepping inside Liam's barn office, Martinez listened quietly as the group laid out evidence: photos, receipts, security footage. Her stoic expression barely changed, but she asked incisive questions, scribbling notes about water lines, farmland registry data, and corporate ownership documents Addison had uncovered. "This is bigger than I feared," Martinez finally said. "You've essentially proven that the vandalism leads to farmland sales or forced insurance contracts, all steering back to the same shell corporations. If I can tie these acts to a broader conspiracy, we might involve the FBI or DEA. But we need undeniable proof, particularly any footage of them handling illegal contraband or referencing drug distribution." Emily spoke up about the chemical traces in livestock. She believed they matched byproducts of synthetic drug labs. Martinez looked intrigued. "If those lab results show illegal compounds, that's solid evidence of narcotics production. Combined with land records and eyewitness statements, it strengthens our case." Thus the plan evolved. Everyone would continue collecting evidence, especially video of suspicious deliveries and attempts to tamper with irrigation. If the Vipers made one slip, mentioning their operation on camera or being caught loading chemical drums, the entire ring could collapse under federal scrutiny. Outside, the golden hour sun illuminated Liam's farmland. The group dispersed cautiously, aware that watchers might lurk near roads. Martinez set off with a promise to escalate matters as soon as possible. A sense of guarded optimism mingled with dread. They were onto something crucial, but if the Vipers sensed a trap, the backlash could be fierce. The next few nights turned into a blur of covert operations. Watkins and Sullivan took shifts monitoring drone feeds, while Addison compiled new testimonies from scared locals. Detective Martinez quietly replaced some county-hired inspectors with trusted colleagues from the State Bureau, hoping to catch the Vipers off guard if they tried to manipulate official reports. Meanwhile, the Crimson Vipers ramped up their intimidation. More cryptic notes, more phone calls to farmers, more vehicles trailing people after sunset. The farmland felt on edge, as if a single spark could ignite chaos. Yet the coalition at Hayes Family Acres persisted, determined to gather conclusive evidence. One critical piece arrived when Emily received lab results from her out-of-state veterinarian contact. The water and tissue samples contained high levels of compounds known to be used in synthetic drug production. If such chemicals seeped into general irrigation, it would devastate crops and livestock for miles. This data, combined with Addison's drone footage of crates being transferred at the old Morrison silo, painted a damning picture. The criminals were using farmland both for raw materials, like water, and for disposing of toxic byproducts. Late one evening, Kevin Walters discovered a hidden valve modification on a communal irrigation line that served half a dozen smaller farms. It looked professionally done, nothing a casual vandal would manage. He hurried to Liam's place, showing photos of how the line had been rerouted. If they open this line, they can channel whatever they want into the water supply, Kevin explained grimly. It's an accident waiting to happen, or an intentional contamination. That same night, Addison was nearly caught filming a suspicious convoy carrying large metal canisters. Ducking behind a tractor, she recorded the license plates. Watkins checked them against a database, only to find they connected to shadowy holding companies. This tangled network of shell entities likely laundered money for the syndicate behind the Vipers. In a midnight meeting, the group strategized a final push to gather indisputable proof. Detective Martinez planned to request a judge's approval for broader surveillance and potential wiretaps, citing the newly compiled evidence of altered irrigation lines and chemical contamination. O'Connor, who remained a silent ally on the phone, floated the idea of contacting a specialized federal task force. These criminals have definitely set up more than a local extortion. If it's trans-state or international, the FBI or DEA would act, but we need that smoking gun, he reminded them. Amid these preparations, the question loomed: would the Vipers sense the net closing in and resort to outright violence? Liam had to be ready for the possibility that Hayes Family Acres might become ground zero for an explosive confrontation. He felt comforted by Watkins and Sullivan's presence, but also worried for Emily and Jade, who tried to maintain normalcy while this quiet war escalated. They stood on the precipice of exposing a major criminal network. But they all knew that sometimes shining a light on darkness provokes one final burst of fury before the darkness recedes. Events hit a boiling point on a windy, overcast afternoon when Addison intercepted a rumor that the Crimson Vipers were moving a large shipment through Riverside County, heading for a bigger interstate road. The route apparently included passing near the Driscoll property, where lingering barn damage made it an inconspicuous spot for a rendezvous. Desperate to confirm, Liam quickly mobilized his allies. He and Sullivan drove a nondescript pickup to the edge of Driscoll's land. Hiding the truck behind a copse of trees, they set up cameras near an old loading dock. True to form, at dusk, two large box trucks arrived, escorted by half a dozen bikers. The operation looked practiced. Flashlights scanning for watchers, a lookout posted near the dirt road, the offloading of unmarked barrels. Their vantage allowed them to capture everything on camera. Sullivan zoomed in, catching a label on one of the barrels, a known precursor for high-grade synthetic opioids. That was the final puzzle piece. A few minutes later, a black SUV arrived. Liam recognized Ryder stepping out, exchanging curt words with a man in a gray suit, possibly from Superior Agricultural Protection or a related shell company. Eager to avoid detection, Liam and Sullivan stayed quiet, but they had enough footage. Texting Addison, they urged her to share it immediately with Detective Martinez, who was standing by. On the other end, Addison got the message and promptly forwarded the video to Martinez, Michelle Park at the Treasury, and even a local news station contact, embedding a timestamp for credibility. However, the Vipers had a late-game contingency. One of their own, patrolling the area, spotted the faint glow of a camera lens. He shouted. Instantly, flashlights converged on the trees. Liam signaled to Sullivan to retreat, but a bullet whizzed past them, lodging into a nearby trunk. They dove for cover. Another shot rang out. Crouched behind their pickup, Sullivan activated a smaller drone that circled overhead, capturing angles of the frantic bikers aiming guns, the barrels on the ground, and the corporate-suited figure sprinting for his SUV. Meanwhile, Liam returned fire with carefully aimed warning shots, forcing the Vipers to keep their distance. The standoff escalated as more bikers arrived. Watkins, posted on a hill a quarter-mile away, provided covering fire from a rifle fitted with night vision optics. This pinned the bikers enough for Liam and Sullivan to slip back into their truck. The moment the pair peeled away, they radioed the footage to Addison and Martinez. It was dangerous, but they'd secured ironclad evidence of the gang facilitating a large-scale drug operation. Within minutes, Addison got word that Martinez was calling in state troopers and a special DEA squad on standby. The criminals might still slip away, but an official crackdown became inevitable. Heart pounding, Liam drove, scanning the rearview mirror for pursuers. Instead of fear, he felt a surge of grim determination. For months, the Vipers had terrorized this community. Now, at least, the rest of the world would see them for what they truly were. The county erupted at dawn. Armed state troopers and unmarked federal vehicles rolled in from multiple directions, converging on sites flagged by Addison's logs: the Morrison grain silo, the Driscoll farmland, and several other suspect storage barns. The Delgado brothers launched their drone for an aerial vantage, capturing squads of law enforcement disembarking, weapons at the ready. Detective Martinez, newly empowered by judge-approved warrants and the DEA support, coordinated raids on locations identified in Addison's and Kevin Walters' research. Sirens blared across gravel roads. Locals peered nervously from windows and fence lines, uncertain whether to be relieved or frightened by the sudden influx of heavily armed officers. The Crimson Vipers scrambled to defend their strongholds. Some tried to brazen it out, engaging in brief firefights on farmland edges. Others fled, deserting their stashes of chemicals and half-finished lab setups. Ryder himself was last seen at the silo, barking commands into a radio while corporate men in suits frantically shredded documents. At Hayes Family Acres, Liam, Watkins, Sullivan, and Victor kept watch, scanning for retaliation. The Vipers had long threatened to use Liam's farm as leverage, but the gang was too busy battling law enforcement on multiple fronts. Instead, a smaller group peeled off toward the main county road near the orchard. Liam's cameras caught them passing, possibly seeking an escape route. By late morning, the DEA confirmed that multiple arrests were made and that several of the seized containers contained precursor chemicals for synthetic opioids. A federal official gave a terse statement to local press. Evidence suggests an international narcotics ring exploiting rural farmland for production and distribution. We have documentation linking shell companies to a larger enterprise. Emily, monitoring the radio from the vet clinic, heard the news in relief, texting Jade that the crisis seemed to be winding down. Jade had spent the night at a friend's house for safety, still oblivious to how close her father had come to danger. Around lunchtime, a black SUV roared into the edge of Liam's property. Watkins and Sullivan braced, rifles ready but lowered. Out stepped Sheriff Halford, not a Viper. He approached with a tired wave, explaining that he'd just come from a raid where they found lethal contaminants in a barn near the Driscoll line. "Your intel guided us straight there," he told Liam, looking exhausted but grateful. "Might have saved half the county's livestock if that stuff had leaked." At that moment, Addison's phone vibrated nonstop with messages, a swirl of media requests and references to the trending footage of the Vipers ambushing Liam and Sullivan at Driscoll's property. The state's attorney general announced an impending press conference on the crisis. Rumors buzzed that high-level officials who had protected the criminals were under investigation. Though the day wasn't over, a sense of victory and vindication swelled in the air. The criminals were being dismantled at last. Still, as Liam exchanged looks with Watkins and Sullivan, he knew from experience that cornered operators often strike back when threatened with certain defeat. Over the following days, a newfound sense of unity blossomed in Riverside County. Though the aftermath of the raids left pockets of chaos, some farmland required soil tests, and a few contaminated water lines needed replacing. Hope reemerged. Farmers who had been too afraid to speak out helped each other repair fences, replant damaged fields, or share surplus feed. Media outlets swarmed, eager for interviews. Kevin Walters ended up on camera with Addison, describing how they mapped the county's irrigation channels to pinpoint the Vipers' sabotage. Driscoll, with his bandaged hand, told a local reporter how the barn arson nearly bankrupted him, yet neighborly aid and a relentless drive to fight back kept him going. At the center of it all was Hayes Family Acres, which many perceived as a rallying symbol. Sheriff Halford himself visited to explain the process for releasing seized farm properties back to their rightful owners. Superior Agricultural Protection's assets were frozen, pending a thorough investigation into fraudulent policies and forced acquisitions. The Treasury Department flagged every suspicious transaction Michelle Park identified, ensuring those funds wouldn't slip away. Detective Martinez, while concluding depositions, privately thanked Liam. Without your evidence and your team's vigilance, we'd be nowhere. You gave us the rope to hang them. But keep an eye out. Criminal networks like this sometimes have stragglers who won't go down easily. Liam understood the caution. The big fish were hauled in, but some renegade elements could still lurk. He instructed Watkins and Sullivan to remain for a few more days, performing recon sweeps around neighboring farmland. Victor continued patrolling, ensuring no leftover vipers tried to sabotage equipment in retaliation. Emily focused on her veterinary rounds, ensuring no further contamination harmed livestock. Her presence reassured local ranchers. She even helped identify a plan to safely dispose of leftover chemicals discovered at abandoned labs. It's going to be a lot of disinfecting and rechecking water samples, she said, but the community was ready to do the work. One afternoon, Addison received a direct message from a journalist in Omaha wanting to run a deep dive investigative piece on how farmland was exploited for drug operations. After discussing it with Liam and Martinez, Addison decided to share carefully redacted documents, omitting personal details that might endanger innocent people. She believed sunlight was the best disinfectant against future scams of this nature. Through it all, Jade hovered at the fringes of adult conversations, gleaning that her father had done something heroic. She asked questions about the bikers, worried about their return. Liam admitted, they won't all vanish instantly, but the worst of them are behind bars. Jade gave a small nod, trusting his expertise. Sunlight cast long, warm rays across the fields each evening, painting the farmland in gold. For the first time in weeks, Liam felt a measure of calm. His mind drifted to the many nights in war zones abroad, yearning for a day he could settle into the quiet rhythms of home. Now he realized that sometimes even home required him to stand guard. A month later, Riverside County buzzed with a cautious optimism. Tractor engines whirred across fields as the late-season harvest approached. The Delgado brothers got their plane repaired and returned to crop dusting routines. Driscoll began reconstructing his barn with community volunteers. Kevin Walters collaborated with a county engineer to install advanced water quality monitors, safeguarding farmland from any future tampering. Federal indictments piled up against the Crimson Vipers gang, the suits at Superior Agricultural Protection, and shadowy executives at Global Agro Solutions. Documents seized from the silo and the Driscoll property tied them to interstate drug trafficking, money laundering, and forced land acquisition. Prosecutors boasted it was one of the largest rural crime syndicate busts in recent memory. Liam took no personal credit in interviews. He told reporters that it was a community effort. Addison's documentation, Kevin's engineering, the Delgado brothers' aerial footage, Driscoll's unflinching resolve to speak out, and law enforcement allies like Detective Martinez. Everyone played a part. In truth, though, many recognized that his coordination and unwavering stance laid the foundation for their victory. Emily noticed Liam waking up earlier these days, taking quiet walks through the rows before sunrise. She understood he was decompressing, shifting out of the mission mindset. While he was relieved the immediate crisis had passed, a piece of him remained vigilant, scanning fence lines, checking the perimeter cameras, making sure nothing sinister lurked. The law enforcement presence gradually receded as the last holdout bikers were apprehended. Sheriff Halford, cleared of higher-level political meddling, began rebuilding trust in his department. Detective Martinez officially transferred to a special rural crime task force, using Riverside County as an example of how to fight organized criminal infiltration. One Saturday morning, Addison hosted a small get-together at Browning's General Store to celebrate. Farmers brought homemade pastries, and the shelves were adorned with thank you cards. Kevin Walters gave a brief speech highlighting the resilience of rural communities. Applause erupted when Driscoll mentioned the unstoppable people at Hayes Family Acres. Addison then led a toast to Jade, who had just won her recent soccer match. A day later, Watkins and Sullivan, their gear packed into an SUV, prepared to depart. Standing by the barn, they exchanged handshakes with Liam. "You know how to reach us if trouble stirs again," Watkins said. Sullivan clapped Liam's shoulder. "But I hope you get to be just a farmer from now on." Liam smiled. "Me too. Thank you both for everything." After they drove off, he stood by the barn a moment longer, reflecting on how surreal it felt. He'd always wanted farmland to be his refuge after a lifetime of deployments. The conflict they faced proved that trouble could find you anywhere. but also that a strong community, allied with know-how and determination, could overcome even a well-funded criminal network. That evening, as the last glow of sunset receded, Liam sat on the porch steps with Emily, sharing a blanket. Jade was inside finishing homework, the yard once again peaceful. Emily leaned against him, her voice soft. "I'm proud of you," she said, lacing her fingers through his. "You never let fear rule you." He exhaled, shoulders relaxing. "Had to protect what mattered," he replied simply, scanning the horizon. The farmland stretched outward, no longer haunted by hidden threats, but marked by the unwavering spirit of those who refuse to let criminals define their destiny. Liam closed his eyes, letting the cicadas' chorus wash over him. Finally, Hayes Family Acres felt like the safe haven he'd always dreamed it would be. From my perspective, the most remarkable aspect of this journey isn't the firefights or the hidden labs. It's the undeniable spirit of camaraderie that pulled everyone together. Despite fear and sabotage, neighbors stood shoulder to shoulder, refusing to surrender the land they'd worked so hard to cultivate. Through brave detective work, swift action, and unwavering determination, they stripped away the facade of intimidation and reclaimed their future. In the end, good folks prevailed, proving that when a community unites, even a well-financed criminal ring can be toppled. Now, I'd love to hear your take on this conclusion. Do you believe there's more our characters can teach us about resilience and solidarity? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Whether it's praise, critique, or a fresh viewpoint, every perspective enriches the conversation. Let's keep the discussion going, and thank you for supporting Farmer's Story.